Okay, so you know that feeling, right, when you're like really digging into something new and you just want to grab like the most important nuggets of wisdom that'll stick with you
Absolutely.
without drowning in like a whole ocean of information. Well, that's kind of what we're going for today.
That's it.
We're diving into a text that flips things upside down.
Okay.
It looks at the world in this almost like paradoxical way, and I think it'll really get you thinking.
Already.
So buckle up. We're going to explore some stuff that might just shift your whole perspective.
Sounds good to me.
So we're taking a deep dive today into chapter 58.
Okay.
It's called Paradox,
Interesting.
and it comes from the Built for God Handbook. Now, this handbook is super interesting because it's all about blending Christian beliefs with the ancient wisdom of the Tao Te Ching. So we're talking about a unique Christian perspective on these Taoist principles.
Okay, I'm intrigued already.
It's really cool. And they're aiming to like unlock some deeper understanding of what they call truth and God's love through this kind of like East meets West lens.
I'm following you.
So this specific chapter, it really zeroes in on the concept of paradox.
Okay.
And it explores this paradox specifically in relation to like governance, fortune and misfortune,
Interesting.
and righteousness.
Okay, I see where we're going with this.
So for everyone listening, our goal today is to break down these seemingly contradictory ideas and really pull out some practical wisdom, about how to lead, how to ride those waves of life.
The ups and downs.
Exactly. And what it even means to be truly righteous.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But we're going to do it all through this super fascinating lens that blends Eastern and Western thought. Think of this as your like fast track.
Right.
Some pretty profound insights.
Right.
So let's just jump right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the paradox of governance. The chapter starts off with this statement. It says, when the country is ruled with a light hand, the people lead simple and honest lives. When the country is ruled with an iron fist, the people become shrewd and cunning.
So it's saying that a lighter touch actually leads to a more honest society.
That's what it's suggesting, and it's kind of counterintuitive.
Tougher enforcement.
Right, a firm hand. I think that would equal more control.
Yeah, more order.
Yeah, but this chapter is saying, no, it's actually the opposite.
That's interesting.
And then it connects this idea directly to Christian teachings.
Okay, how so?
Well, it points to the story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet.
Right, in John 13.
Exactly, and that's like the ultimate example of servant leadership, right?
Absolutely, leading through humility and service, not by force.
Exactly, and it really makes you think, like, maybe that's the key.
Yeah, maybe that's what creates that more genuine honesty in a society.
When leaders are more focused on serving than on controlling.
Right, it's like a totally different approach to authority.
And you know what's interesting is that Jesus' actions weren't just symbolic.
Right, it wasn't just a one-time thing.
Exactly, it was a fundamental challenge to the way leadership was often understood.
Yeah, he was directly opposing those who ruled with a heavy hand.
Exactly, and you see this when he criticizes the Pharisees in Matthew 23. Remember how he talks about them placing burdens on people?
Yeah, he wasn't a fan of that kind of leadership.
Definitely not, and I think the principle here is the same, whether it's governing a country or anything else.
Yeah, a lighter touch, a more trusting approach.
Yeah, it creates space for people to flourish.
Versus like crushing their spirits with an iron fist. So I'm curious, for you listening, how do you see this playing out in your own life?
It's a good question.
Like, where do you see this dynamic of light hand versus iron fist?
It's everywhere, right?
It is. Think about it, leading a team at work, raising a family.
Or even just like trying to influence people in your community. Makes you really examine your own style.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you more of a micromanager?
Feel like you always have to be in control to get things done?
It's a good question to ask yourself.
This paradox is like an invitation. Think about the power of giving people space.
Of trusting them to figure things out.
Exactly, and maybe even achieve more when they're not being micromanaged.
It's a thought-provoking idea.
It is.
So let's move on to the next paradox.
Okay.
The paradox of fortune and misfortune.
Interesting.
So the chapter says this, misfortune is but the shadow of good fortune. Good fortune is but the cloak of misfortune. It's deep.
It is. It's like saying they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, highlighting this constant interplay between seemingly opposite experiences.
Like they can't exist without each other.
Almost like they define each other. And you know what's really fascinating is that the handbook then connects this idea to Matthew 19:30.
Okay, what does it say?
Well, Jesus says, many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first.
Right, so it's that constant reversal of expectations.
Exactly, and it reminds us that things are always changing.
Yeah, nothing stays the same forever.
And I think that's a really grounding perspective.
It is, because when things are going great, it's like a little reminder.
That it might not last forever.
Exactly. And when you're going through tough times,
It gives you hope.
right, that things will eventually get better.
The chapter even brings in Romans 8.28.
I love that verse.
It says, in all things, God works for the good of those who love him.
So even in the midst of hardship,
There's potential for something good to come out of it.
it's about seeing the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
So how do you usually react to those ups and downs?
Yeah, when things are going well, do you get complacent?
Or when you're facing challenges, do you lose hope?
This paradox encourages us to find that balance
To remember that both fortune and misfortune are temporary.
and that they're connected.
It's a call to stay grounded no matter what life throws at you.
I like that.
Okay, ready for the next one?
Yeah, bring it on.
All right, this is maybe the most thought-provoking paradox, the paradox of righteousness.
All right, let's hear it.
The chapter asks, is there any righteousness as it appears to be? What appears right develops into awkwardness.
Okay.
What appears good develops into evil. Right? It really makes you question everything.
But what even is righteousness?
Exactly. And I think what's so insightful here is that it's warning us against judging things based only on how they look.
Superficial righteousness.
Yeah, exactly. And the handbook connects this to the dangers of being self-righteous and judgmental.
Right, like thinking we're better than others.
And it actually references Matthew 7:1-5.
Where Jesus talks about judging others while ignoring our own flaws.
Yes, and it's so easy to do that, right?
It is. We can be so quick to point out the speck in someone else's eye.
And completely miss the log in our own.
Exactly. And I think this paradox is reminding us that our own biases
And our own limited perspectives.
can totally distort our view of what's truly right.
Absolutely something that seems obviously right on the surface.
Could have unintended negative consequences.
Or something we think is good could be motivated by selfish desires.
Or end up causing harm.
It's like our judgment is clouded.
Yeah, we need to be careful.
And, if we look at this from a Christian perspective, true righteousness isn't about rigidly following rules.
Or boasting about how good we are.
It's about something much deeper,
It's an internal state.
about humility.
Recognizing our own imperfections.
And having a genuine connection with God and with others.
Rooted in love and grace.
That's the heart of true righteousness.
Beautiful.
Now, this leads us to a really interesting description of a wise person.
Okay, I'm listening.
The chapter says that a wise person is righteous without being condemning, pointed without being piercing, straightforward without being ruthless,
Interesting.
filled with light without being flashy. It's about finding that delicate balance,
Between holding on to your convictions,
but expressing them with empathy and care,
yeah, not being afraid to speak the truth.
but doing it in a way that doesn't tear people down. And I think the handbook connects these qualities to the Christian ideal of weakness.
Combined with wisdom. Paul talks about navigating challenges while staying true to his faith and showing love.
It's that idea of strength expressed through gentleness.
Exactly.
And it reminds me that you can be firm in what you believe.
Without being harsh or judgmental.
You can be honest and direct.
Without being cruel.
And you can have a genuine inner goodness.
Without needing to show off.
It's about humble service, not about seeking recognition.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So the handbook then expands on these paradoxes
Okay.
in a section called Renewal.
Interesting.
And it focuses specifically on how these paradoxes can shape our mindset.
So it takes those core paradoxical concepts and it gives us practical ways to apply them to our thinking.
I see. So it's like taking these abstract ideas and making them more tangible.
Exactly. So for example, it talks about leadership with gentleness, which directly relates to that first paradox we discussed, governance.
Right. The light hand versus the iron fist.
And it links it to 1 Corinthians 16.14.
What does it say?
Let all that you do be done in love.
So leading with love, not with force.
Precisely. And then it goes on to talk about embracing both good fortune and misfortune, which connects to that cyclical nature of life. And it reminds us of Philippians 4.11.
Where Paul says he's learned to be content in all circumstances.
Yeah. So finding that inner peace and stability, regardless of what's happening externally.
Makes sense.
And then there's the mindset of discernment and humility and righteousness,
Okay.
which dives deeper into that complex paradox of what's truly right.
That's a big one.
It is. And it references John 7.24. Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment.
So looking beyond the surface.
Exactly. And recognizing that our own perspectives are limited.
Humility is key.
Absolutely. And finally, it talks about the mindset of wisdom in action,
Okay.
which brings together those characteristics of a wise person that we discussed.
Right, being righteous without condemning and all that.
And it connects it to James 3.17.
That's a beautiful passage.
It describes godly wisdom as, first of all, pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. And it's a reminder that wisdom isn't just about what we think
It's about how we act,
and how we treat others.
living out those qualities in our everyday lives.
And you know what I think is so cool? Is that the handbook then goes on to show how these paradoxical ideas are found in other spiritual traditions too.
Really? So it's not just a Christian thing?
Exactly. It's like a universal wisdom.
That's fascinating.
So for example, when they talk about leading with humility, they bring in Luke 22.26 from Christianity.
Where Jesus tells his disciples that the greatest among them should be like the youngest and the leader, like the one who serves.
Yes, and they also include a teaching from Buddha about being a servant to all, and a saying from the Prophet Muhammad about the leader being the servant of the people.
Wow.
And even a quote from Lao Tzu himself about the importance of selflessness in leadership.
So it's like this shared understanding across different faiths.
Absolutely. And they do the same thing when they talk about fortune and misfortune.
What do they say?
Well, they bring in Romans 8.18.
I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us.
Right alongside Buddhist teachings on impermanence.
Makes sense.
And a verse from the Quran about hardship being followed by ease.
Okay.
And even a passage from the Bhagavad Gita about remaining balanced in both pleasure and pain.
So it's like this universal truth that resonates across cultures and religions.
Exactly. And I think it's so powerful to see those connections.
It shows that these fundamental insights into the human experience, it's about finding that common ground.
And appreciating that shared wisdom.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think this chapter really challenges us to rethink what effective leadership looks like.
That maybe the most powerful approach is actually the gentlest one.
Exactly. And it reminds us that life is constantly changing.
It also encourages us to look beyond appearances when it comes to righteousness, to cultivate humility and really discern what's truly right.
Not just what looks right on the surface.
Exactly. It's a call to lead with empathy, not control.
To embrace both the good times and the bad times. To practice a more compassionate form of righteousness. And to seek a quiet and unassuming wisdom in how we navigate the world.
It's about questioning those assumptions we often make about power and success.
And what it means to be a good person. So here's a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
Could it be that true strength isn't about wielding power over others, but about cultivating inner resilience and understanding?
Yeah, that true wisdom.
Isn't about having all the answers,
but about embracing the paradoxes of life.
and acknowledging that our understanding of what's right or good, keep exploring these ideas.
Yeah, see where they lead you.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
Take care.